Hi, what you've just seen is the operation of a very basic hydraulic system. We're going to be covering how the system works and its components in more detail in this module. You're going to need to take good notes because we're going to ask you to use the information about this system in the following learning activities. Hi, what you've just seen is the operation of a very basic hydraulic system. We're going to be covering how the system works and its components in more detail in this module. You're going to need to take good notes because we're going to ask you to use the information about this system in the following learning activities. If you want to learn more about note-taking, pause now and go to the hydraulics website and click on note-taking. If you think you're ready, then continue. Okay, let's take a look at the basic components that make up a hydraulic system, their functions, and how the components work together to make the system work. The first item we'll have to have in a hydraulic system will be a supply of fluid. Hydraulics is fluid. The fluid is stored for us in a reservoir unit. In this particular installation, the reservoir is here below on the lower framework. Access plate on the end of it for cleanouts stores the fluid. So we take the fluid from the reservoir and it is forced into a pump by differential pressure. Now the pump in a hydraulic system only does one thing for us. It produces flow. For our purposes right now, we're going to say that the hydraulic pump will cause the fluid to flow through the system. We have to have some motive force or energy input to the pump because the hydraulic system takes one energy form and converts it to another. And on this particular installation, our energy input comes from the electric motor. Now the electric motor on the back drives the hydraulic pump, and we will convert electrical energy into mechanical or hydraulic energy. We can also hook to this a gasoline engine, any form of energy that we can produce rotary motion with can be tied to drive our pump. Coming back to our pump, we've already said it produces the flow. So as the oil flows from the pump, it proceeds through. The next item we will come to will be a system pressure relief valve. The pressure relief valve is going to limit the pressure in the hydraulic system. Where does pressure come from? I said all we have is the flow from the pump. The pressure is created in a hydraulic system by resistance to flow. If there is no resistance to the flow, there is no pressure. But as we build resistances downstream, if the flow is blocked off, the pressure will increase. It can increase to the point that it can destroy the system. It will either stall out the pump or rupture the lines, or any of numerous other destructive things can occur. To keep that from taking place, we have a pressure relief valve that limits the maximum pressure we can have in our system. Now for startup purposes, our electric motor has a limited amount of torque that it can input to turn the pump. So we have a valve setting here that's called an unloading valve. The unloading valve opens the flow path from the pump up directly back to the reservoir so that at startup we get our electric motor up to its running speed without fighting an excess pressure load against the flow of the fluid. Once our motor comes up to speed and is operational, I will close the loading valve, and that will give me then working system pressure and flow available for the rest of my hydraulic system. So this valve should always be open for startup of a unit and closed when we're running the unit, then opened again for shutdown of the unit. Now our hydraulic fluid comes out and we bring it into, from the pump, the flow comes into a pressure manifold. This manifold has 3 ports in it, or 3 passages. One of them has the pressure line connected coming in. The other passage through it will be returning to the reservoir, and still another passage in it will be going back to the drain. The drain will bypass our filter. The tank returns we'll find will go through the filter. So we have brought our hydraulic pressure and flow up to the manifold. At this point, to see what kind of pressure we have available on the system, we have teed off at this point a system pressure gauge. This will read the pressure that's available from the pump to the hydraulic system to do meaningful work with. Now, coming away from the manifold, I connect the hoses and come to a directional control valve. The directional control valve gives me authority over an actuator so I can control its direction of motion. The setting we have hooked up today is that the directional control valve will control the operation of the cylinder. I can extend the cylinder, I can retract the cylinder, or I can stop the cylinder mid-travel any place I desire by positioning the handle on the directional control valve. When I position the directional control valve, hydraulic fluid will be ported through, come to this end of the cylinder would retract, the fluid on the downstream side of the piston and the actuator will be pushed out, come through the directional control. At the same time that it applies pressure on this side and flow, it opens this side up and this oil is free to go back through the manifold in the tank line and return back to the reservoir. So we have now taken hydraulic fluid and accomplished meaningful work through an actuator with it. Now the returning fluid will come back, and located at this area here we have the return filter, so that any dirt particles that accumulate in the oil are trapped there and taken out of our hydraulic system. And that is a very basic hydraulic system, the components in it and the functions they play. Now, let's look at the system in operation and see the components as they function as we just described them. The first thing we'll do is come to the electric switch and start our prime mover, in this case the electric motor. The electric motor is now turning the hydraulic pump. Fluid is being taken from the reservoir, circulated by the pump through the system, through the unloading valve, which I had open for start, and returning to the reservoir. And we can see I have no system pressure at this time because it is dumping across the unloading valve. As I close the unloading valve, we see the system pressure building. That's resistance to flow. As this is closed, the fluid path is still blocked off. We're not doing any work with it. The pump is producing a given flow. The oil has to go somewhere. So it is flowing across the pressure relief valve. So my pressure relief valve now dictates the maximum system pressure that I have. System pressure is available in the pressure passage of my manifold, available to my directional control valve, so as I shift the lever, my cylinder will actuate. If I move the knob to the right, the cylinder retracts. If I move to the center, pressure is off, and notice when I come to the centered position, my hydraulic system pressure goes down to 0. In this system, when the directional control is in the off position, system pressure is simply, or system flow is dumped back to the reservoir. I don't waste energy pressurizing fluid that I don't need. Moving the lever on across to the left, the actuator extends. I can stop it at mid-stroke. I can reverse its direction. An advantage of hydraulic control, I can have instantaneous reversal of direction. Now that you've seen a hydraulic system in action, with the aid of your notes, draw a block diagram of the system and label each of the parts I've described. If you feel your notes aren't complete enough, or would like a simple review of the system in operation again, it's okay to go back and review until you feel comfortable. If you feel you need a review on how to do a block diagram, pause now and go to the hydraulics website and click on how to do block diagrams. I gave you a couple of coughs in there, and I'm sorry about that. It's early in the morning, so
That's fine.
such is life. But no, it's not good. People don't come to us and they cough.
But again, it's just sort of basic.